Welcome everyone to Higher Talents, the Future of Contingent Workforce series. We've been doing these broadcasts for, I guess, over 6 years now. We started in January making predictions about the year ahead, and then we come back together mid-year check-in to see what we got right and areas of improvement. 2026 has been a wild ride for the job market with people in our industry being impacted by rapid changes happening in our country and across the globe. So we're going to zero in today on the impact of advances in AI and other technologies. I'm really excited about it. I also want to kind of highlight that if you think about the U.S. economy, it's largely a service-based economy, and one of the biggest drivers in inflation is labor. And the fact that oil prices have gone up and inflation is still dropping, it kind of indicates that there might be some softness in the market on the job front, given that it's one of the biggest drivers. So just wanted to put out that little tidbit. I'm excited to bring about the leaders today from CW to talk about how the industries will adapt and change in these disruptive times. So let's introduce our special guests: Pam Sands, Senior Principal and Strategist at Kelly; Brian Hoffmeyer, SVP Market Strategies, Beeline; Doug Cotlier, VP Client Solutions, Guiding Global; Mike Moxie, Director of Global Product Strategy at Allegiance Global Solutions; Ryan Baker, President of Monument Consulting; Kelsey Williams, SVP Global Segment Leader, Contingent Solutions; and Sarah Koschel, CRO at Brightfield. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Definitely. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the predictions that we had in January, and I'll read them out, and you guys can kind of tell me where we're at now. So Brian, you said one thing, a big trend was to have a strong focus on mid-market and bringing services and tools we all offer to smaller companies to take advantage of them in a way that larger companies have. Do you think this has been happening?
Yeah, I think we got this one right for sure. We have seen a ton of adoption of various technologies and services in smaller and smaller companies, that are well under $1 billion in corporate revenue, because they have the same issues, needs, opportunities, challenges that bigger companies do. Their world of work has become more complex, just like it has for larger organizations, and the decisions about how work should get done. How do I do that in a way that's compliant with rules and regulations that continue to grow with additional options for that? They're facing those same pressures, and they need non-employee workers to get their products out the door. So there's a lot of similarities there. I think one of the places where there's a difference, there's a challenge, and there's a place for all of us to rise to this opportunity is those folks often don't have the resources that larger companies do. They don't have the knowledge base. It's pretty easy to get them to be aware and acknowledge they have a problem that needs to be solved, a challenge, an opportunity, however you want to put it, but it's getting them to that next step. And that's one of those things where it's incumbent on all of us to show them how we can help them get there and provide that education and support.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pam, your prediction was we'd see a greater need to understand what's going on from an economic impact in the marketplace perspectives that impacts the labor market, and it'll influence how we carry out these individual markets. How do you feel about that? Does that still hold true?
Absolutely. No truer words were spoken. Little did we know what was going to be in front of us in January, right? We didn't expect a war and some of the other things we have in front of us right now. So I'm convinced more now than ever that this also needs to be an area for us, because market forces and what happens economically, politically, what's happening on the geopolitical stage, they become labor market forces over time. They come right back to the workforce. I mean, I have a situation right now with one potential partner I'm working with, and we have things stuck in the straits that can't get through, and how that impacts supply chain, how that impacts our work. So I think this is one that we absolutely got right in January, and one we need to double up on for the rest of the year.
So Pam, what I'm hearing is that your work and my work here is done.
Ryan,
we got our predictions right, and we can move on.
That's right. We can. We got our predictions right, for sure.
And then, and Ryan, you did not predict that we'd have a war with Iran. Okay, so great. So given where we're at today, where do you see the trend going for the second half of the year? Sarah, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. I'm happy to answer that. I think, we have seen staff aug workforce decline since, say, 2022, while services spend has increased. I think most organizations that we all work with, the Global 2000, still have labor demands. At the same time, they've had to hyper focus on cost savings initiatives. AI or automation will support those labor needs, but I don't think it will. I don't think it will entirely eliminate headcount, and neither will it eliminate cost, at least yet. I think the future or the second half of 2026 will be a product of reacting to companies' demand for labor and service needs, but with creativity to align with their operational efficiencies that they're going to be demanding and cost management targets. So labor needs won't go away, but without a doubt, I think there will be a need to automate the processes. If it's using AI, both basic, agentic, I think we will see adoption to this, especially if we are smart in the way we all deployed with them.
I'll jump in.
Ryan, your thoughts?
Sarah. So mine's a little different view on that same exact subject. I kind of did some research ahead of this and looked at now again, it's our view, it's Monument's view, and it's also our top 10 to 15 supplier partners, which do billions and billions of dollars of spend around the globe, right? I actually think second half is going to be super fun for our industry. And why I say it's going to be fun, I think the demand is screaming right now. It's not showing up yet, but I think it's really, really interesting what's happening. Every big staffing provider I'm talking to is getting more requisitions than they expected to be getting. They're filling more requisitions, just based on the amount of requisitions they're getting. So then I looked at our actual data. I'm going to share real data from our accounts. This is January. Our positions were up 45% year over year. Staff aug positions, no services in these numbers. This is same store, not new accounts. So 45% in January up, 80% February, 49% March, 37% April, down 23% in May, 52% in June. Lot of momentum there, and those are all leading indicators. So I hope all that turns into headcount, all that stuff doesn't wash, but that gives me a lot of hope for our industry. And then I think that from an MSP perspective, only we continue to see our customers wanting us to expand into new parts of the business. So either new business units that aren't currently in scope, or obviously services, which we talk about a lot. I think that's big. And then I think that everyone is going through some sort of transformation right now. I mean, it's an exciting time we're living in, and customers are trying to figure it out, right? So as it relates to staffing, I think that creates a demand. So we'll see if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll jump in for a second to say on that. Sorry, I'll jump in for a second. I think I agree with Ryan in terms of the second half of the year is going to be interesting. What we're starting to see, I think, more and more of is, really customers coming to us and kind of going through this whole transformation conversation, right? So they're transforming as an organization. We talked previously about the whole balloon analogy of, you squeeze one side, the other side gets bigger between services and procurement. One big shift, and I'll say, I think this was maybe somebody's projection in January. I wasn't on that call, but I think we are definitely seeing a shift towards more talent acquisition, HR-led workforce strategy, workforce management conversation, and a bit away from sort of the traditional procurement lens. And I think ultimately, to Ryan's point also, that's where the excitement comes for us, because that's a much different conversation around how do you plan for outcomes of the business versus just how are you planning for cutting costs or limiting supply chain. So I think that's the shift that I see very directly happening already, is that shift towards more of the workforce strategy, business outcome solutioning sort of perspective, which which is much more exciting for us as MSPs, certainly, to have those conversations than cut your rate by 10%.
Yeah, I agree, Doug. I think we're being given a unique opportunity to show up as strategic partners to our clients and not just providing transactional staffing value. And I think the shift that we're seeing is more towards the experiences of buyers and how it's easier to do the right thing and make the right buying behavior, being driven from more of an orchestration level. And that is inclusive of really all of the contingent labor categories across the organization. And it's elevating us to having that depth of conversation and again, showing an opportunity for us to unlock that level of partnership and engagement.
Kelsey, I would definitely second that. I would add to it with a lot of these leaders are thinking that way along the lines of orchestration and all the behaviors that we probably want them to think about. And then the conversation pivots to, well, what's your operating model today? And I think there's a key breakdown that's occurring or witnessing where organizations are looking at their model and saying, we don't have the right model in place today to fuel and accelerate where we want to go. And that may be a starting point to unlock some of those outcomes that you referenced.
And I'll add one piece in there as well to this, is that I think it's also that more strategic question, which is not only what they're doing, but what's driving them to do it. So what's happening around that's driving them to do it. I think that's really critical as we go forward, because the dynamics are changing so much faster than many of the systems and what's been put in place can handle. And so understand that driving force, I think, is going to be really critical, not only for the rest of this year, but as we go into 2027.
Yeah.
To follow up with that, Ryan, I mean, the growth is amazing. Do you think part of the driver was that like 2023, we were in this area, we overhired, we needed efficiency, and now we're looking at like how fast AI is pushing us, so we need to go speed to market. And so everyone's like, we need to bring product to market faster, and that means we need more resources. Is that where you're seeing the shift, the mind shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still, and this is probably always the case, but I think it's still segments that are growing more, right? Like every segment is not growing like that, but we talked about this a little bit as we prepared. I think we are seeing a lot of demand because of AI in the technology space. I think at first we weren't sure what was going to happen, so I kind of was paralyzed. But now customers and folks there's two things happening. One is I think AI doesn't solve every problem. Two, you have to get it deployed. And the third thing is that it's more expensive than I think people thought it was going to be. So like maybe I just need to hire. And that's a little bit of just lighthearted view of it. But yeah, I think that IT and technology is starting to come back a bit. The not skilled labor, like your lighter industrial areas. I mean, they still very labor intensive. Healthcare seems to be making a little bit of a comeback too. So there's definitely segments, and then there's portions of the business or economy that aren't coming back as quickly. So.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, you totally did. Absolutely. And I also think people forget that. I know there's a lot of scare tactics around AI the last few years, but every technology innovation creates a ton of jobs, right? And even we always tend to make things more complicated. So if you think about it today, like when I grew up, the only way to get in touch with me is on a rotary phone. And now if you reach out to me, I had to check my LinkedIn, my Instagram, my messages, my WhatsApp, right? And so I have 7 different places to make sure I miss something when you're trying to reach out to me. And so I think that creates
you probably were like a huge microfiche fan, weren't you?
Exactly. Overall, have you seen client expectations change this year?
One thing that I've seen that's been interesting is with the pace of change. I feel like we all probably work with organizations that are very fast-paced in how they adapt to change, and then very slow-paced organizations that are a bit of a moving the Titanic, if you will. And each one poses its own unique challenges, and I think in just what's happening with AI governance, proper utilization, adopting tools within their ecosystems that drive the right outcomes. And so, I think with that, the organizations that take down barriers and resistance to change, but also balance that with the right processes, what business challenges are we actually trying to solve for, are the ones that are going to win the race. So I think that's been, outside of the skills transformation, the data transformations more practically or tangibly, with if organizations out addressing that piece, they're gonna have impacts.
Yeah, I think we're seeing.
Sorry,
real quick. I think what we're seeing a little bit of is what we're seeing as an organization as well, and probably everybody, is the straddling the line of what do we want to be when we grow up, right? Like, where are we headed? Where's the industry headed? Where are we as a company headed? But oh, by the way, we also have results that we have to hit this year, so we can't just completely shut down, reinvent the company, and then come back. And so I think that's right now what we're seeing a lot with, how our customers changing and adjusting with us. It's how can we help them in the immediate term, but also have a forward-looking lens to say, this is where we think things are headed. This is how we think we can help with that. But we also recognize that you have jobs and openings and outcomes that you need to take care of today. So it's an interesting time as far as that goes, because everybody, you layer AI on top of that. Everybody's going, well, what is that going to really look like in 6, 9, 18 months?
Sure.
I don't know that anybody fully knows, but everybody's got to have an opinion, a point of view, and then you got to navigate the today versus the future.
Yeah,
I think
one
interesting points, from both Kelsey and Doug, and there's this contrast between organizations who are moving quickly, those that are moving somewhat, and then some that are completely paralyzed by these changes. And we're seeing all three of those things, and it doesn't necessarily always relate to what industry they're in. You see technology organizations that you might expect that they'd be moving quickly, and they're the ones that are not. And I think, Doug, your point about none of us really know where AI is going to be is a huge one, because the first 60 days of this year were revolutionary. Our technical teams talk about that all the time. The acceleration that occurred was not what any of us were expecting in terms of the things we'd be doing with AI. I mean, last year at this time, we were talking about, using LLMs to write emails, right? And, help with RFPs, and sure, that still happens, but the capabilities are just staggering how fast they've changed.
Paul, that's so similar to what I was going to jump in with, in that it's shocking how quickly expectations from buyers have shifted to tasks and actions that are now table stakes to be underpinned by AI. And I think that's sort of part and parcel with what you mentioned of just the speed at which we have to shift to meet those demands has never been faster. And what used to be aspirational 6 months ago is now table stakes, and that'll make your neck hurt. It's your head snapping back so fast.
I think the shift that it's caused too is organizations that moved fast now are seeing the impact of the cost of AI, and then reprioritizing all the initiatives that they had slated for 2026 because they have to reduce costs and find the way to balance their sheet for the remainder of the year. So that's been interesting to see as well.
Yeah, there was an interesting article.
I think we're all touching on it, but I think one of the nearest term impacts on it is that the decisions about work itself, how we've all touched on it. How is work getting done? Who does that work? Really taking more of a look at the work that needs to get done, the capabilities that's needed in that organization versus the job descriptions that they had out there to find the person to fill the job. So I think it's really pushing us in this area, or I know, and the conversations I'm having are around work. How is the work getting done? And it's a silver lining in all of this, because a lot of companies have been really far behind in their own workforce and capability planning and strategic workforce planning. I think we're going to see that accelerate as well, because there have been examples recently, and we've all seen them in the news, of companies that have had major layoffs, and then all of a sudden they were moving to AI, and then they came back and they're rehiring. Well, the question I would have is, was there some good strategic workforce planning and capability planning ahead of that to answer some of these questions? And if there weren't, what did that cost them as an organization? And I think it's really a silver lining that's having us all pause and ask some of these more thoughtful questions.
I think that's super smart and well said, Pam. I mean, people weren't doing that, and I think still aren't always considering all of the avenues of how work gets done in that planning, and need to do that. And that's one of the things we talked about in prep. are AI agents now a category of the non-employee workforce? And my argument would be, sure they are, and they need to be managed and governed in those same ways. And I don't think most companies have really even thought about that. And just like years ago, there was a hot potato around who manages contingent workforce, procurement, HR, whatever. We're now having that around agentic AI, and you probably added more hands into that game of hot potato in terms of, is it IT, is it procurement, is it contingent, like who owns it?
Yeah, do you think that's a product though of, I think historically organizations have tried to leverage policy instead of data and data-driven education to inform strategic hiring decisions. I mean, perfect example is organizations implementing policy around 10-year policies on contingent workforce, but not services, right? It may solve one problem, and then you have the squeeze the balloon effect. I think that, this whole informing and strategic work can be solved better with data, insights and ways to help inform buyers on better buying decisions. And if the decision needs to be based on cost, they need to know the cost impacts of contingent versus SOW versus FTE versus AI. And if the decision needs to be based on quality or speed, they need to know the speed and quality impacts of sourcing via their staff aug channel, services channel, FTE channel. And data can provide this, and policy sometimes just counters the behavior. And I also think that's where AI and also just integrating systems so that data can help be the data decision driver, if you will, versus it being you must hire a staff aug worker in this case.
So Sarah, to follow up with you on the question, because I was gonna, like, you brought up some good points here, and you all did. We've kind of had the data for a while, right? We've all created these pretty dashboards, but the dashboards were left to be interpreted by whoever's looking at the dashboard, right? And it might be too much information, but at this point, like, are you seeing that? Because I know you guys are all building systems where it's saying, okay, here's the data, and here's what I suggest you do with it based on the data we have. This is the strategy you should implement. So it's sort of connecting the dots and saying, this is what it means. Are you seeing a lot of that? And is that impacting? I'm sure that you've probably told a client, hey, we need to do this, but it's a lot different when a system saying, here's the facts around it, and this is our recommendation.
Yeah, it has to be, and I think this is what we're seeing as well. I think one of the demands or needs is, and it's not much of a changed expectation, as much of as an acceleration of that need is, those insights at the time of sourcing. I think what failed, the whole strategic workforce planning topic, I think failed because it would be, let's analyze all the company's data, put it in a dashboard and share it. Well, we're already too late. It's in this point, things are changing so quickly. Hiring managers don't know what they need, after the next 1, 2, 3 months. It's much more dynamic. And so being able to have insights at the time of purchase is kind of the most effective way to get it right and impact things like cost, quality, risk, right? Let's talk about how many times do we talk about misclassification in any given week? Well, we're already being reactive and looking back if we're already looking at thousands of statements of work that should have been sourced via staff aug. If those insights could have been provided to the buyer at the time of purchase or the time of source, could have totally prevented that quality risk and cost problem.
I think you have the issue that Kelsey kind of mentioned too here, right, is the moving of the Titanic, right? So while I don't think you're at the point where, to your point, Ashish, where decisions are being made at the time that they should be made, even with the data. I think part of that is people are people, right? And so people are used to doing things the way that they're comfortable doing them. And so it kind of goes to the AI agentic question too, right? Like, you can layer agentic into an organization to gain efficiency, but the ultimate advantage is redesigning the process. I think that's the opportunity, is getting people to think about it differently, with supported to Sarah's point around the data that's able to be provided at the time of decision. But there is a significant behavioral change. People are used to doing what they're used to doing because it's the path of least resistance. That's where I think the hardest challenge is to make that change.
I think what's crucial. Oh, sorry, Ash. I think what's crucial, and I think what I'm seeing more of as well, is procurement sponsors, HR sponsors, buyers, IT organizations, for the first time in a long time, working collectively on some of these business challenges in a way that we're better suited to address broader workforce strategy in a way that we haven't traditionally been able to. And I think, Sarah, to your point, it becomes more about what is the work that we're looking to get done and what is the best channel, versus just trying to prevent friction by tenure or policy, which we all know gets posted on a website and doesn't ever get followed. It's about delivering that experience where managers want to work in the proper way to mitigate the risk to the business, or the exposure to the organization, or the costs opportunities that unlocks for them, and again, just more meaningful ways. So I think that's been great to see across organizations this year.
And Kelsey, do you think, I learned from Brightfield yesterday that 2 years ago there was 20% misclassified workers in SOW, and today it's 40%. And so that's doubled in a short amount of time. Do you think that's partly because we got so good at, in the CW program, to create these rules, that the rules got too constricting, and so everyone's like, I don't want to follow them, so let's move it into another location. So
yeah, I think so. I think the fragmentation of these different programs, of these different parts of the organization, are things that just create manager behavior where they're working around those processes and following the path of least resistance. Everybody's just trying to get the job done. They're trying to get butts in seats. They're trying to hire the worker in the quickest way possible. And that's not always by following the best route for the organization. And I think what we've seen with this kind of balloon effect is just that. It's parts of the organization, TA, procurement, HR, not speaking to each other and creating transparency. And I think that's what AI and the capability of AI is unlocking, is just being able to create that data foundation in a way that visibility is created, so that organizationally across those different functions, the right decisions being made. Mm-hmm. And that's just, and I think it's an evolution that we did not have this time last year in the ways that we do today.
And it could be a product of the fact that a lot of organizations are focusing, capturing visibility into services spend, and more categories of it, versus just say IT. I think it could also be a product of that. And when most organizations have a cost savings target and initiatives that are prioritized, I think the staff aug category has, as we all know, it's been much more mature in respects to visibility and management. And so I think it's a product of the fact that there is much more attention on services spend. We're all getting more visibility into it and finding ways to speed up the visibility of that spend, to then identify the precise details of where's their quality, risk, and cost.
Sarah, do you see that increasing in the coming years? Because I think there's, I don't know, as everyone was making their comments, I went back to like a COVID reference of, cases are increasing because there's more testing being done. And it seems like there's almost a parallel here of, as there is more attention and governance placed around services spend for all the reasons that everyone referenced. Mm-hmm. I think it's always been that way in some degree, but then we'll see more of that action and insight coming forward as more organizations focus on the outcomes and getting more value. And that's my personal 2 cents, but curious if Brightfield has a similar view.
Yeah, similar. And I think we have seen an increase in focus and needing and wanting speed into visibility into services spend. And I think it goes without saying. I think we all know this. It's the big driver is the fact that a lot of organizations are under cost management initiatives, cost savings targets. And when you're staring at 100 million in staff aug spend and $1 billion in services spend, that's been kind of untapped. Of course, you're going to go there to see where's the opportunity within that population.
Ryan, are the buyers pushing the right levers?
So I want to comment on something that both Sarah and Mock said. This idea of like data and visibility and decision making is a really important one, because like that is so much more interesting than just policy for policy's sake. Like human beings are going to react negatively to policy. They're going to look for ways around it. I don't know why this is the quote that's coming to mind, but Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park says, "Life will find a way." Like that's what people are doing. They're finding a way to get the work they need done. And so I think that's like using data and asking the why question over and over again. That's going to lead us to provide better outcomes and better services and better technologies for our clients, rather than like policy as a hammer. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Ryan, are you seeing are the buyers pushing the right levers for cost savings, and are they thinking about the long-term impact?
I would say no. And I know that this came out in our prep session as well, but like anybody that's an MSP on this call knows how we get like just beaten up in these like processes, right? These deal processes. Hop, I know you deal with it on the VMS side too. It's like you're talking 10 basis points here or 20 here. And I think it was Doug in our prep session. It's like, man, it doesn't even move the needle, right? Like that 20 basis points just doesn't move the needle. Like the real movement is, and I think Kelsey, you nailed this a second ago, but it's so true, and executing on it is another thing, but getting the business, getting procurement, getting HR, even legal, finance, all of those parties on your like customer side, talking, communicating, and aligned is how you actually find the savings levers. And I think one lever is absolutely what Sarah just talked about, which is $1 billion of services spend and 100 million of staff aug. It's like you're trying to beat us up on the 20 basis points on the 100 million of staff aug. We got $1 billion over here that 30 or 40% of it's misclassified. Like, let's go save that money, you know? So I think we're getting there though. I mean, we're seeing it, 50% plus of our spend these days is services. It probably should be like 80-20 services in our programs, if you're being real. Customers are coming around to it because I think you're right. They've squeezed, the juice out of the staff aug side of it, and in fact, I think that's part of the reason why so much has gone to services is because we've gotten too restrictive on that side of the business. And that's us, that's the client. Sometimes it's bad behavior by suppliers, that's created that policy that office saying people are trying to avoid, but then we create this whole other monster. And so I think there's the services side of it. I think there's still some staff aug related. I think there's an opportunity to do more like, call it middle lane type staffing within your staff aug programs, meaning, hey, this is kind of a project, but we want to work with one company, but it really doesn't need strict SLAs and it doesn't really need outcomes, but let's just give it to this one vendor or give it to two vendors and bring it to staff aug and pay, a 50% markup versus 150% markup. And for whatever reason, that still feels like a fight a lot of times. It's like, guys, just single source it or limited comp to these two and let them get the job done, and it could be a massive cost savings for you. Instead, you want to go over here and pay these exorbitant rates and for whatever reason. So
yeah, right.
Answer, but I think no. I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Take it a step further in terms of sort of back half predictions or maybe into next year. I think a lot of the staffing suppliers are going to become more emboldened, and we're already seeing sort of trends of this, of saying no to just the rate suppression alone for a staff augmentation role, because they can do, whether it's enhance their skills and capabilities, produce more outcome-based work, or quite honestly, they're just sick of being hit over the head over the last 2-3 years from a rate standpoint. And I think that affects everyone then, whether it's clients or MSPs that are on the call, in terms of if that behavior continues to happen, that trickles back to the client.
You bring up a good point. I think with supply chain partners and having a supply chain strategy, I think that they're a bit of an unlock when we think about contingent workforce in the lens of what should be staff augmentation, what should be professional services, and having that opportunity discussion with them about how can we discuss with the end client, how can we partner with you on what is a mutual strategy for both of our organizations to properly categorize work, and how can we create value in the supplier MSP conversation to drive the right behaviors. I think where we have the capability to build a strategic partnership on both sides, it can create, a mutual beneficial relationship.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that too. I mean, Ryan, I would agree with you 100%. Like the opportunity to sole source or, give 2 to 3 suppliers an opportunity to bid on a project. It is still a people business at the end of the day. The business wants to work with people that they know. You sole source something, you eliminate the whole internal conversation of 3 workers from 3 different suppliers and different benefit packages and different rates and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, Kelsey, you're 100% right. It is incumbent on MSPs, because I think the MSP model is evolving rapidly, and the old MSP model is definitely dying off. It's more about how do you partner with your customers from a strategic supplier relationship sort of perspective to achieve those business outcomes. And that, I think, is where we're going to see the shift back away from like driving contingent labor to look and feel and smell and taste more like services. Ultimately, that's what the business is desiring, and which is why they're going around us into those services sort of decision making. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to have those kind of workforce strategic, supply chain strategic conversations, and not just land on the 2 basis points reduction of an MSP fee. Doesn't move the needle on cost savings.
Yeah, I think the question, are the buyers pushing the right levers for cost savings? I think I'm in agreement with everyone. We see a lot of focus on just beating up the staff aug category. And I sound a little bit redundant here to my last response, but the staff aug category has been, decades managed, right, versus the services procurement categories. My answer to this is I do see quite a few buyers. So my answer would be yes. Some are definitely pushing the right levers. And I think we're only going to see an increase in this where there is that, as I mentioned in my previous response, there is a growing focus and priority on speed to visibility into services spend to help inform realistic savings strategies and to convert savings opportunity in that category to realized. I mean, if we talk about, Ryan, I think you reiterated this, $100 million in spend in staff aug versus $1 billion in services spend, we can find millions in savings on just one statement of work. We see as high up as 20% in realized savings on one statement of work of, say, 30 million. So if you think about that compared to what you can get for an assignment or 2 on the staff aug space, it's 10x. And so I think we're seeing it, and I think we'll continue to see attention refocused on those other categories.
Definitely. Doug, so let's go into AI a little bit and risk management. So in January, the industry was saying that, well, not the industry, but the leaders were CEOs of these large companies were saying that a lot of jobs could be replaced by AI. They were kind of token maxing. And we went from token maxing to now 6 months later, we're talking about hiring maxing because all the tokens didn't work out the way we thought they would. And that's also led to sort of big candidate resume maxing as well. And so how are you guys dealing with the issues of making sure the person who applies for a job is the person who applies for a job and their experiences are relevant? Or is that becoming a major problem statement you're trying to solve?
Yeah, I wouldn't even go so far as to say becoming. It certainly has been an issue, and in my specific portfolio, I have some regulated customers, right, utilities and so forth. So it's an even bigger issue. And so, as I'm sure everyone knows, there's some tools in the marketplace that we're using to help with some of that. but it is. I mean, and that's a big conversation that we have with customers. And this goes back to the conversation we were just having as well. I don't believe that it's nearly as well regulated on the services side, right? Because of one of the things MSPs do bring to the table is a level of governance and compliance that doesn't always exist in services. So I think that is another sort of risk mitigation factor that we can talk to customers about, is how are you leveraging these bad actors, either bad actors or just, fraudulent actors in terms of candidates and coming in to do work that they're not equipped to do. So yeah, it's definitely a conversation, certainly a bigger conversation in the regulated industries, but it is something that we're grappling with consistently.
Pam, what are your thoughts around this topic?
I think they're interconnected. So from the last conversation to this one, I think, can we start asking the question, is cost that lever that needs to be pulled as hard as it's pulled on a regular basis? And maybe start asking about what business outcome do they see the program needing to protect or enable? And that's where the risk piece comes in. And especially around risk that the individuals, to your question here, Ash, as far as, who we know is coming in the door and who we're attracting. I think it's really looking at we're not just responding to the questions asked of us, but are we asking better questions of the programs ourselves? Are we really being that trusted advisor and partner to the programs and to the buyers and to all the different stakeholders within the programs, to take that to another level 2, level 3 thinking around the program? Because the opportunities in front of us are incredible, but they're also complex. We've all said that in different ways on this call today. So therefore, I think our questioning needs to be more aligned with that. And I think when we can look at the questioning being more aligned, then these things like risk and the things like cost and that type of thing start have different meaning than they did in the past.
Yeah, and to add to that, I want to ask another question. So when I get onboarded to a client, we'll definitely get documents and say, okay, do's and do nots, and here, don't have the contractor use their own personal laptop. They have to use a corporate laptop, things like that. Are clients asking you guys to upgrade those do's and don'ts? Because now everyone's going to use their own chat GPT, and now we're accidentally putting financial data on a chat GPT to build an Excel sheet, which is corporate data, and it's being put out in the universe now. And so is there a risk process that you guys are putting in place to take on some of these new things that have never had to deal with before?
I would say the simple answer is yes. I think going back to even, because I think there's a blend to that last connection or the last question that you asked around sort of the deep fakes and frauds and whatnot, is this conversation very quickly spills into, are you creating an AI solution where there's now bias entering the discussion, which unlocks a whole different sort of discussion risk profile within each client organization, depending on, I think Doug, you might have mentioned regulated markets, or if they're doing work with a government, that unlocks, step 3 or door 3 in some of that complexity. So I think as new technologies emerge, as clients sort of, and buying organizations better clarify their position around AI and bias and how that connects to business process, I think this is going to be really something to monitor over the next 6 to 12 months because I think it's going to change significantly.
Yeah, for sure.
There's very much an arms race going on. And, I think I used this analogy last time. It's about, you don't have to be absolutely impenetrable, invulnerable to fraud. You have to be better than other people so that they are more attractive targets than you are. It's the same thing of protecting your house from a robbery. I love analogies like this. You just have to be harder to break into than your neighbor. That, because you're never going to be able to defeat all of the bad actors. They're moving too fast. And so that's how you've got to look at it and apply as many things as you can to prevent these things. I completely agree with this. What's that?
So be a less attractive target?
Yeah, I mean, on some level, yes. Because you're never going to make it so that it's only a matter for any company of any size. It's not a matter of if, but when, they're going to be subjected to fraudulent candidates, whatever it is, and so that's, I think, a way to look at it. This topic was, we had our client advisory board a couple of months ago, and so it's 20 or so clients across a wide range of industries, wide range of sizes, and literally this was the one thing that was on everyone's mind. 100% of the clients wanted to talk about solutions. And I think across VMS, MSP, and the staffing suppliers, all of us that are part of this industry, we all are part of solving the problem.
I thought because you were in Jacksonville, you were going to go with you just have to be a faster swimmer than the other guy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I've long learned that I do not go near any body of water in Jacksonville because it's infested with alligators. So.
Or sharks.
Sharks.
So I would say on this topic too, like in just one quick note, is like this is where the human factor comes into play as well. Like humans are really important in stopping candidate fraud. So much of it is just like the AI or the tools we use can't decipher just weird behavior or behavior that doesn't seem normal, and a human can be like, there's something off there. And so I think that a lot of the staffing firms are making sure that their recruiters are doing a really good job and kind of being that third or fourth set of eyes. So we can't underestimate the human factor is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely have to keep the human in the loop. In fact, we actually had to hire more recruiters because there's so much fraud going on that we use systems and people to sort of figure out whether somebody's legit or not. Ryan, I want to ask you about, so the world of agentic is sort of approaching us really quickly right now. People are starting to hire companies that have agents that can do work and to replace some of the things that may be low value, maybe high value at this point. So I was wondering if top of funnel, you're starting to put in decision trees, say, this is SOW, this should be an agentic worker, this should be a human, and then also put like a cost savings thing, because sometimes the agentic may be more expensive than the human, and figure out where do I allocate resources. Is that something that you're seeing clients ask for, and are you guys starting to manage agentic workers?
Did you ask me or Brian?
You.
Me. It's definitely being asked about. It's been brought up. I think the VMS, and that's why I was asking, did you ask me or Brian? I think it starts with the VMS and how we track it. But yeah, customers are asking about it and just asking for our guidance on how they should think about their agentic workforce. So I think, time will tell, but I think it makes sense, especially going back to Pam. I think it was you that said it, but that workforce kind of planning piece. If you don't have the view of all of your different, labor categories, full-time, staff augmentation, ICs, services workers, agentic workers, then how can you make the proper decision? So I think it has to be tracked at some point. How we do that, I don't know, but I know the VMS seems to make the most sense right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, amen and hallelujah. I mean, like it's just it's so very true, because it starts with tracking all of it. Like until you can do that, you can't make strategic or tactical decisions. It kind of what I think I said earlier, who owns that component of the workforce, and like who's trying to push it off versus trying to embrace it. So companies have to decide on that, and then they have to look at to Sarah's point, look at the data to make better decisions, again, both holistically and then at that tactical level. And like one of the things we're looking at is at the front end of that process, how do we make the decision making and guidance around how work gets done more sophisticated, and not just like a series of 6 questions that a 5-year-old can figure out how to game very, very quickly. It's got to be, it has to incorporate all of the different options, but again, be more sophisticated and not just around policy, but what's the best combination of worker type, cost, quality, timeliness, all of those things.
Yeah. Also long-term need. A common question we used to, I think, all see is, should I be hiring contingent worker versus an FTE to do testing? Or is in 6 months this role going to be completely automated? So perhaps we should hire contractors, because why hire an FTE for a job we only need for 6 months? I think historically, years ago, it used to be staff aug versus FTE, or at least that's what decision, trees were built around, right? Staff aug versus FTE. Then we saw staff aug versus services versus FTE. Now I think we're going to start seeing, staff aug versus services versus FTE versus bot, or automation. I think there will be a fourth dimension there.
Definitely. Kelsey, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think this starts, and I think it was Brian, you were sharing this with the data and what should be handled by agents. And I think that that's part of the transformation work that organizations are just in different parts of their journey and maturity of being able to answer that question. So I think a lot of interesting work that's happening is looking at tactically, even at a RACI level, where should humans remain in the center of that process, and then working through the handoff points or the control points or the exceptions processes that need to be followed when you deploy agents into a workflow. So I think it's easy for organizations to try to start at the end, right? But foundationally, if you're not addressing some of these basic questions, you're going to build something that doesn't, at the end of the day, work and can't be maintained. So I think that that's more of organizationally where I'm seeing the conversations at right now on the maturity level, knowing that, yes, that is what they want to get to.
Absolutely. And Mike,
Yeah, that's that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, that control bit with agents is really hard, and we've all had that experience with our own personal version of AI. Like, I don't know how many times I've told Claude to stop using stupid M dashes, and it's in my About Me file, and it still ignores me. And I'm like I'm literally find myself like typing in all caps, like, why are you doing this? You know better. And it then apologizes, but there's no way to, like, this is gonna sound really bad. There's no way to punish it, kind of, like, other than maybe not feed it tokens or something like that. And, I think we need to think, like, when, that's sort of like a humorous example, but when you're talking about like somebody that's deploying code, I mean, like, I read a story about an app that serves the car rental agency where a Claude agent deleted their entire production database and its backups for 3 months, and they lost literally 3 months of bookings because there weren't the right controls, and, like, to the point we've all been making, like, a human in the loop to help make those decisions. And so I think that's a huge part of this, and like, it's going to be very hard to stay on top of.
Have I ever read a similar story where it said Claude asked Claude to clean up your mailbox, so it deleted everything? Technically, it cleaned it up.
Right. Yeah. Great. I mean, I wouldn't say no to that right now, looking at my email inbox, but so if I don't respond to any of you, it's because Claude deleted it.
Just hit Control A, Control D, Bob.
Yeah. All right.
The 2026 version of
I'm
the
going to tell Doug you gave me.
Yeah.
So, Mike, sticking on this AI.
I'm going to tell Doug that you gave me permission, Sarah.
Mike, sticking on this AI theme, how is AI impacting VMS MSP costs and rates? Because there's two parts to this. One is on the operational piece, but also I've been seeing that lower entry level jobs have reduced in the spend, but I'm seeing a lot of higher level jobs being added into the programs. So are you seeing that? And then the second part of the question would be, if you are automating different pieces of the program process, there's still real cost in technology. So is it really giving you cost savings yet, or do you see it in the future?
Yeah, great question. One we're probably all confronting in the marketplace on a daily basis. So I think my prediction or my thoughts are it's going to change the operating model first, as opposed to billing rates, at least in the near term. I made the comment before of, client expectations around what's automated has significantly increased in the last 180 days. And as we make this sort of progression towards reducing manual effort, improving decision quality, increased cycle times or connection between outcomes and SLAs, I do agree that we're going to see less volume on the sort of high volume, lower skilled work. And we're seeing that sort of skills shortage just shift to higher upstream, and we're seeing higher bill rates occur there. So it's so all over the map right now. But I think the argument at hand is every organization that's investing in AI infrastructure is confronted with our costs are going up and our customers are pushing us to reduce our costs, and how and where that plays out over the next 180 days, I think is going to be really interesting to watch.
For sure. Doug, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, because I totally agree, Mike, like there's this expectation that AI is going to allow things to be cheaper, VMS and MSP. And I like, this isn't totally, I mean, it is self-serving, but not totally. Like, I don't think that's the case. Like, AI is incredibly expensive.
And getting worse.
You know, and getting worse. And it can't just be absorbed.
Yeah, I would say, Ash, the conversation hasn't shifted to the cost.
Yeah, I agree.
For us, really. It's really been more about how are you leveraging it? How are you using it? How's it going to affect how efficient you are with the program? It hasn't transitioned to what's that mean for me from a dollars and cents perspective. Like, so it's been a little bit, the customers that I've had this conversation with, it hasn't shifted to what can you save me as a result yet.
I think it shifts.
So they're in the faster, better period. They want more, faster, better from you guys.
In essence, yeah. Like, how are you doing things more efficiently as a result, and how is that going to benefit the program? Not so much how is it going to save me money. That hasn't been part of the conversation yet.
And Kelsey?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's certainly shifting where and what resources are needed when we have agents in the workflow driving automation of tasks. You know, we need more resources that are able to look at the AI output, have strategic conversations with end clients and customers about the value that they can create, all the things we've talked about here. But you also need a whole lot of maintenance of the foundation of work that has been built, because if that's just sitting there without the right controls, mechanisms of the MSP constantly cleansing that and keeping it updated, then the outputs are going to be ineffective pretty quickly. And so I think it's just more of a shift of skills and not necessarily reduced cost, Ash, to your point, that we're seeing and anticipating.
And one thing I would add there is we all know that it's pretty obvious, but there's not a one size fits all solution, because it's bespoke to each client and where they are in their own evolution and maturity model and where you are. And one of the things that I mentioned recently in some internal conversations was around, you know, the need to bring in the business partners internally that are closest to that, closest to those market dynamics, what's happening within our own technology, digital first solutions. Because I think this is a long game in this conversation with clients. So that ability to say, how do we do this without having to, you know, where we've got standard without having to have everything so bespoke, but knowing that's where we're meeting them is where they are today. And with the right partners who know how to share the most recent updates.
You bring up a really good point though, Pam. I think what's going to be the challenge for us as technology organizations, as MSPs, is how can we create scalable processes with technology, with AI, but also that allow the flexibility and configuration that all of our customers expect. It's the balance of how can we serve the end client while also preserving the whole goal of the value we're trying to create by having a single data source and a single foundation. And the more that we customize a lot of that framework, the less value we can create in those conversations. And so it's an interesting conversation to have.
And Kelsey, there's something to one of the reasons they're hiring you guys is to bring best practices. So
exactly
moving to that standardization.
From a bright field, sorry, go ahead.
You're gonna go ahead.
I was just gonna add, I know it's not directly answering how does it impact the MSP VMS, but just from a bright field perspective, our own use of AI for our own internal initiatives, we are seeing significant benefit of AI, and we are actually leaning into using more tokens. We took an estimated 4-month project down to 4 days using using AI technologies. So from a tech company perspective, we are definitely seeing the significant benefits of using it and investing in it.
For sure. Well, this has been great. I'd like to end this with, and thank you all for doing this. It's always been insightful, and it's a fun dynamic between everybody. What are you most excited about and hopeful for the second half of the year? I'd kind of blend it there. Kelsey, you want to start? We'll go around.
Gosh, yes, of course. I think first and foremost, I'm glad we're not all bots, like my dear friend. So in the first half of the year. I enjoy working with you all, but I'll keep it broad. I'm genuinely, I think, excited about the opportunity all this is unlocking for just conversations we're having with our customers and really the value we're able to create with solutions. MSPs, speaking for just MSPs, we've been stagnant, right? We haven't had this type of environment to really help accelerate what we're trying to build and do with end clients. And so that, I think, for the remainder of the year and just the conversations we're having is incredibly exciting.
Love it. Sarah?
I mean, she's, I think Kelsey said it best. I think we are in very exciting times. I think if I could sum it into like one statement, it's we're going to see a focus on the need for speed, right? Speed to visibility, speed to create efficiencies, savings. And I think we're in really exciting times with what we all do and how we lean into our customers' need for that speed.
Definitely. And Doug?
Yeah, I feel like a parrot, but yes, I think Kelsey summed it up well. What I'm excited about is just the visibility that customers are giving us into the wider workforce management and workforce orchestration conversation. That is new in my experience over the last couple of years doing MSP and over the last 30 doing staffing, right? They're looking at it from a much more strategic lens and a less technical lens. So I think that for me is exciting for the rest of the year and in the future.
Definitely. And Mike?
I'll take a slightly different look so I don't repeat, but I think I'm excited for everyone seems to be giving each other a lot of grace right now that we're all going through this together. And it's equally exciting, and we're all sort of equally sort of endeavoring to go on this journey together. And I think that's going to unlock some really interesting things that no one's even thinking about right now. And so that's just a really exciting journey to be on, particularly on the back of the last couple of years.
For sure. Ryan?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back a little bit to the question that you guys just answered, but is our fees coming down or being asked to come down? Like, I think Kelsey said it, but I think our customers are asking us to do more, be more strategic. They also have to come along that journey with us. So the thing that I'm excited about, and I think this is the biggest risk and the biggest opportunity for us, but it's just not doing anything. It's that paralyzed comment that a couple of us made earlier. I know Brian said it, I said it, but our customers can't be paralyzed. So I'm asking our teams, our program teams, especially with legacy current accounts, to partner with their customers and challenge them to think boldly, right? Take on challenges that you thought were impossible to solve and then go surprise yourself. I think we don't dream enough. You have to dream a little. It makes life better. It makes work more fun, and you often just accomplish a lot more than you thought was even possible if you just break out of the mold and stop playing scared. And so I think my final point is build a vision with your customers and joyfully commit to it.
Love that. Huff?
Wow, this is a hard act to follow at the very end. I mean, there was some really good comments there. Ryan, I really like what you said about looking for the joy. I mean, the way I always term that is looking for coming at things from a position of abundance versus scarcity. And I think that's a great thing for us as humans to do. I guess I'll be the geeky technologist here. I think I'm in a nerdy way, I'm looking forward to seeing how AI policy evolves over the next few months. I think it's going to evolve really quickly. There was a really interesting article this week from the co-founder of Google DeepMind, whose name I will not try to pronounce. Go look it up. It's his ideas are really, really interesting, and I think it's important that the collective we, as a society, and then all of us in this industry, think about the question of what should we do over the next months and years.
Love it. And Pam?
Oh, absolutely. I will say, and it's a little bit aligned with what Ryan said, but I'm excited about the possibilities in front of us. We are essential to the world of work and the future of work. And those possibilities in front of us are only as limited as our beliefs in what we can do. And that's what I think is so exciting. We actually touch something that is critical to people on a day-to-day basis. Just pay attention to your conversations over the next couple of days with friends, with colleagues, and see how much and how often the term what people do for work comes up. Not the jobs they have, but what they do for work. And it gives you a different renewed sense of why we're in this industry, why we do what we do. So I just think the future is full of possibilities. It's limitless. And I'll be interested to see what we're talking about if our predictions on this call were right by the time we get to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. That was amazing. Definitely an honor, and that's a wrap for Future Contingent. See you next time.
Thanks. Great.